Looking at the measure item. Um, Measuring has a couple of high-level things here: position and elevation, sun exposure, the weather forecast, or a view from here. Um, that's what we do from a single point. On a line, we can show the distance on that line, or the distance between 2 points. We can take a bearing from a point. We can show the profile of that, or terrain statistics. Or again, if it's an area, if it's a polygon, we can measure the area involved. So I can do it two different ways. I can do it from the menu, but for example, if I right-click on this, on my line, and you can see what happens. Let me go back and do that. I have a hand as my icon. As I bring it over the line, the hand turns to a pointing finger, and the line becomes thicker. That says I'm on that object, and I can ask for a profile of it. And our profile says, well, here we were standing at 10 feet high, and we moved down to 7 feet, and all the rest of the line we never went over 7 feet of elevation. And all the way to the end we went 0.014 miles. Okay, 7 feet at 0.014 miles. The range was 7 to 10 feet. We had a minus 3 feet sampling interval over our area. So we can see the profile, or again, if I wanted to look at the stats on it, I can see the same profile here, but it'll also tell me elevation, the slope that we have, which is 0 degrees, the direction that the line was traveling, essentially north. There's 100% of zero tree cover in the area that we were just looking, and that land cover has all been 100%. If I look at a marker, now again, because this is a point, I can measure, actually none of these. I can't measure area profile on a point, but I can come to point info and I can say, okay, what's its position? Again, we see that it's at 7 feet elevation. Its aspect, in this case 24 degrees, doesn't say too much because it's only a point. But we can see this now as, here's our UTM coordinates here. We can see National Grid coordinates, which are the same as UTM, only with the 100,000 meters separated into a separate code. We see our decimal degrees, our degrees decimal minutes, and then degrees minutes seconds. So we can see all of these for that point. Again, for a point, this time I'll use the ICP. I can see the weather forecast for that area. Okay? Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay, Monterey area. Here's going to be the weather forecast for this area. An interesting one that I get is the view from here. Now this is pretty good if you have an area with some terrain. But what this is saying is that in this area where I'm looking, I can see Benicia State Park. I can see the Twin Sisters. I can see a peak at 1,150 feet. I can see Signal Mountain. But let's go ahead and we're going to zoom in, and you can see down here that our view range has changed. It was, pretty much everything north. This is what I would see from west to east. Now I'm zooming in a little bit more. I'm zooming in a little bit more. And so I can see the different peaks. If I turn this and start looking to the east, I can see Thunder Mountain. I should be able to see that from a 20-foot elevation. Here's Olympia Mountain. Here's Ransom Point. Okay, there's the Devil's Pulpit. There's the top of Mount Diablo. Here's the north peak. So this is things that I can see standing at that point and looking southeast this is what I would see. So this is a handy thing. You can use this in the mountains to see what you're looking at. Okay, and so again, from a point, these are some of the things that we can use. I want to do a quick now on just measure. Clicking measure itself, I can measure distances. So if I want to know how far is it from Arroyo del Hambre to the waterfront amphitheater, if I do a double click, it will come back and say it's 1,853 feet. Okay. I can measure, I can take a bearing to say from here, what direction is it back to my ICP? And it says, well, it's going to be 110 degrees true or 97.4 magnetic, and it's 0.466 kilometers back. Okay? This is what measure is showing us. We've seen position and elevation, we've seen the forecast, we've seen the view from here, measure distance, take a bearing, we've seen the profile that shows the elevation changes, the terrain statistics that said there's no vegetation, it's all developed, and a polygon. Okay, so if I drew a search assignment, for example, and which we're going to, I'll use an area assignment. I'll actually do that. I'm going to click, 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 click. We want somebody to search this area, which is a polygon. Okay. Having done that, I can now ask the system to measure the area of that. Actually, I'll get that on the polygon itself. Let me do it this way instead. All right, well, all right. We'll draw another one and say, okay, measure the area inside of that, and it's 4 acres. Okay? So, this is what the measure menu item gives us. Print. We are going to go into a whole separate section on printing because it's relatively complicated. But what you need to know and need to see is that, yes, we will do a print to a PDF or JPG. This is what we do all the time. And just very quickly, the big red box shows us the area that we're going to print. There's a number of changes we can make to it. We can change the size of the box, or we can drag the box around by clicking on the dot in the center. Whatever's inside that box is what would get printed. We're going to do a whole section on that later in the course. So I'm going to leave that for right now. The other thing that's handy is print a coordinate list. For any marker that we've put, any clue, it's going to show us again all the UTMs, and we saw that. Here's the UTM, national grid, decimal degrees, degrees, decimal minutes, degrees, minute, second, elevation of the 49ers hat. Same for our ICP, same for the PLS. This can be a handy thing to have, especially if you're talking to the helicopters or other teams. Knowing the coordinates, different ways of using these coordinates, you should be able to talk the language that anybody else needs. And you can do that just by saying print coordinate list.